So you remember a few years ago, a document got leaked about the black identity extremist classification that the FBI had for black activists. Well, this is another document that's been put out that we're going to talk about. So they have a document that came out earlier this year by a major law enforcement training group urging police departments to treat Black Lives Matter activists like terrorists who are plotting extreme acts of violence. So it said a document sent by the International Law Enforcement Educators and Training Association to the thousands of members of the association by email in October calls Black Lives Matter and Antifa revolutionary movements who aims to overthrow the U.S. government. Now, Antifa, that's accurate for them. Black Lives Matter movement ain't even moving like that. They just really not. I mean, trust me, they're not. They just want some set-asides. They want jobs. They want, white capital and validation. I mean, the group itself, they're not trying to overthrow anything. That's a freaking lie. Antifa, yes. Black Lives Matter, the group, no. So it said, according to the 176-page paper entitled Understanding Antifa and Urban Guerrilla Warfare, was distributed after months of national protests and outrage over the death of George Floyd. So it says critics of the document fear that the guide, which is used by small and medium-sized police departments across the country, which lead officers to act with force against activists. They said Phillip, he said he's a Yale professor of African American Studies and Psychology and CEO of the Center for Policing Equity. He said the new training materials may result in more violence. He said, I worry that it leads to people dying unnecessarily. They continued to talk about that there will always be differences of opinion. This is what the Harvey Hedden guy, he's the executive director of that organization, that police organization. He just called it a difference of opinion on training issues, but as long as the disagreements remain professional and we do not censor these ideas. Well, why don't you want to censor an idea where it's a lie? Now, they continue to say that the Black Lives Matter movement has trained dedicated snipers around the country and coordinated leading up to and following the presidential election last month. Black Lives Matter don't even carry weapons. Like, what are you talking about? Dedicated snipers, those militia groups that's out there, those white ones like the Oath Keepers and 3%ers, they the one with all the guns and snipers. It's amazing how they have no paperwork for all the white militias that showed up at a state house in Michigan. They went in a state house with guns in front of the cops and no cops pulled their weapon on them. None at all. Let a black man even halfway walk down the street and they think he got one. They ready to blast up on him. So they said the guide also claims that activists who participated in the protests over the summer in reality are useful idiots providing cover to hardcore trained terrorist troops. Well, let me tell you something. What are you talking about? No, I cover the news. Okay. Let me tell you who's committing the acts of violence. Let me tell you who was starting things. They had black people in the street doing things peaceful in the right way. Antifa, mzungus, came and bust out windows numerous of times. We have all that on video. There were times that the Antifa, the mzungus, painting black BLM on things, and then brothers and sisters say, hey, what are you doing? We don't need you to do that. We didn't ask you to do that. They tagged BLM, and then everybody say, oh, the black people did it. I've seen so many times where they're throwing things at cops when the black folks wasn't even throwing nothing. And then that's how things get started. And that's how things get escalated. So every time that the mzungus was showing up, like Antifa for sure, trouble followed right behind them. And then my people get blamed. My people get put in a list like this. Because understand, when they say Black Lives Matter, they don't mean a group. They mean all of you. Listen, if you're black, you in Black Lives Matter. That's how they look at you. Everybody's Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter to them is code speak for black people. Because who's in Black Lives Matter? Who's a card carrying member of Black Lives Matter? I'm not. I've never been affiliated with no Black Lives Matter or no group. I will not affiliate myself with groups. We are a news organization. We can't do that. For journalistic integrity, we cannot affiliate ourselves with groups like that. So who's in Black Lives Matter? That's what I want to know. Most of you who watching, do you have a card to say you part of Black Lives Matter? And if we part of Black Lives Matter, I'm not getting all that white capital that's been in the millions given to Black Lives Matter. And also Black Lives Matter chapters, the people who's really about Black Lives Matter, they're not seeing a dime of that money. They asking where that money at. But all that money, by the millions been flowing through Black Lives Matter and the chapters. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about that too. That's coming. Because all these Black Lives Matter chapters say they're not getting a dime and they putting themselves on the line and they need that money so they can do what they got to do. And it's a big finesse going on with Black Lives Matter. All these corporations giving all this money and none of the local chapters seeing a dime of it. They always finesse it. If it's not Black Lives Matter, it was the Time's Up thing. They was finessing money. Everything they do is a big old con, if you think about it. It has nothing to do with black folk. This is the thing. They're always going to have documents like this. They study us. They listen, 176 page document. How much writing you need to do? Seriously. How much writing do you need to do about one group of people? But this is how they get down. I guarantee they ain't got no 176 page document about no other group, but you know, other groups ain't out here in the street trying to push back either. They just want to go along to get along. So that's why they like other groups. I mean, they willing to be slaves like that and just roll over. But at the same time, they don't mess with other groups like they mess with us either. So I can understand why they just at times just don't want to get involved in anything because they're not really bothering them like that. I guess it's great to be them living in America. We have the nightmare, they have the dream. But leave me a comment if you know anything about the situation, you know, with this police organization. Remember, it's the International Law Enforcement Educators and Training Association. They're training those race soldiers to target activists in the street. You wonder why they become so violent.